Church here, and welcome to the Game Grinder, and welcome back to part 2 of the games I beat in 2018. Just like I said in the first part, and the year prior, I really enjoy reviewing games as I play them. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do that, so this is my way of reviewing those games. There's a lot of great stuff out there, and maybe I can sell somebody on a cool game that they didn't know about. So let's get right to it then. So the first half of 2018 was pretty awesome, played a lot of great stuff. Second part of 2018, more of the same, more awesome stuff. And this first game is no exception, and that is Detroit Become Human. This is the latest game from Quantic Dream, mostly known for their previous games, Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, and Indigo Prophecy. Detroit Become Human is my favorite Quantic Dream game at this point. It takes place in the not so distant future when androids are being implemented within our everyday society, and these androids are starting to kind of wake up and gain their own sentience. Questions of who they are, why they're there, and what their purpose is. And this story follows 3 different androids in 3 different situations, with some fascinating, engaging, and heart-wrenching choices to be made. The game looks gorgeous. The actors who provided the mocap and the voice acting did such a fantastic job. So much like most of these games, do not skip this one. This is one of my favorite games of 2018. Then next up is a game that was in my backlog for a little while. Again, I wanted to squeeze in some retro when I could, so I decided to play Seiken Densetsu 3, otherwise known as Secret of Mana 2. Now, this game was never released in the US, and that is a shame. Now, I love Secret of Mana, and Secret of Mana 2 or Seiken Densetsu 3, whatever you want to call it, doesn't take that away from it, but what a great follow-up. Gameplay is very similar to what we're used to, the visual stylings are similar, there's some notable improvements, and they did some really interesting things with the story. They really they focused more on the story with this game, and kind of the hook with this one is that you can pick from a few different characters, and depending on who you play as, gives you a completely different start to the game, and has some different events throughout. So if you are a fan of Secret of Mana, I would definitely recommend trying to play Seiken Densetsu 3 or Secret of Mana 2. However you can get to it, whether it be emulation, physical reproduction. And again, this is just a huge reminder that we really missed out on some amazing games. But thanks to the power of the internet and a lot of hardworking people who have done fan translations, we can now enjoy a lot of these missed gems. Then the next game was beaten in a single sitting along with my brother and a good friend of mine. I'd mentioned in the previous video that I do often weekly, bi-weekly hangouts where we play video games, and this was one of the cases we were deciding on what to play, decided to bust out the Steam link, and this was a game suggested by my brother. And that is Guns, Gore, and Cannoli 2. Obviously, this is the follow-up to Guns, Gore, and Cannoli, and basically this is a side-scrolling twin-stick shooter. Kind of the first one of these that I've experienced, I guess. Most twin-stick shooters are usually like isometric or top-down. And I will say, for what this game was, it was a lot of fun, especially playing with friends. You just run through, blasting the heck out of things. It can get pretty challenging at some points. Gotta be a little careful, sometimes you can hurt each other. Probably not a game I'd normally go out of my way to play, but as a couch co-op sort of situation, I think this game was a perfect choice, and we had a lot of fun playing it. Then the next game was a game that I was actually anticipating quite a bit, and that is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now, a lot of you might be thinking, yeah, of course, why wouldn't you be anticipating that game? And for me, I'm not much of a Zelda fan like most people. The series kind of lost me once it went 3D, but I will say I thought Breath of the Wild looked pretty awesome, but I didn't really have the means to play it. I didn't have a Nintendo Switch, and I didn't have a Nintendo Wii U. Thankfully, I have some awesome friends, and Jason of Corpse Flood Gaming had hooked me up with a Wii U and a copy of Breath of the Wild, so I decided I needed to take advantage of that and play through this game. And I don't think I can really add anything to the conversation that you all haven't already heard. Definitely not a perfect game. With playing Breath of the Wild, I wouldn't have changed my 2017 Game of the Year picks, but it is definitely a must play. They really nailed it with kind of the play how you want to play, do what you want to do, open world sandbox gameplay style that they went with. I was kind of bummed with the lack of kind of like more world building, more characters in the world. Of course, there's the stables all over the places where you could have like minor conversations with people, and the few towns that had very specific quest lines related to those towns, but not a lot of things that really kind of like pulled the entire world together besides just the general narrative itself. But I am giving praise where it is due, and this game is incredible. I ended up putting in 85 hours, I recovered all 13 memories, I defeated all 4 divine beasts, I unlocked the 3 springs, and funny enough, exactly spot on, I completed 100 shrines and found 100 Korok seeds. I only missed like, 20 shrines or so, and I I definitely missed a lot of Korok seeds. That sort of item gathering, grinding is not for me. More power to those who enjoy that sort of thing. I will say the Koroks were pretty cute, and I had a lot of fun. I hope they follow up the next game kind of in this style, building off of what they did and just improving on it. So maybe I'll be anticipating the next Zelda game. So then the next game's not actually a game, it's another DLC mode. If you watched the previous video, I talked about a DLC for Shantae Half Genie Hero, and this is the final piece of DLC that they put out. It's just another little additional add-on to the costume pack, essentially. This was the Jammies mode, where again, you're basically just replaying the levels of Shantae Half Genie Hero as Shantae in Jammies. They kind of change up the basic story to justify her running through Sequin Land in her jammies, switches up some skills, more content, and content that I have a lot of fun with. So yeah, it's DLC, last piece. If you played the other stuff, I would say if you enjoyed that, you'll enjoy this. And then I followed that up with some more DLC. Usually I don't go back to games once I complete them to play through DLC, but this was a case where I decided to do that, and that was the DLC for South Park: The Fractured Butthole, specifically the Bring the Crunch DLC and Casa Bonita. Now at this time when I'd played this, the Bring the Crunch DLC had just been released, and basically it was a parody of your summer camp slasher movie where the kids go to a summer camp and some things go down. As the name entitles, this episode brings in Mint Berry Crunch to the crew. If you know South Park, they do a lot of out of left field shocking things, and the end of the Bring the Crunch DLC was totally messed up, but hilarious for what they were doing. And then, like I said, I also played the Casa Bonita DLC, and this has the kids going to Casa Bonita, which is a Mexican-themed restaurant, and there's a run-in with the vampire kids and some plots to kind of take over the world. There's some really hilarious scenes. There's a great underwater level. Michael Jackson makes a funny appearance, or I guess should I say Corey Haim? I'm not sure. But I will say, if you have not played South Park: The Stick of Truth or South Park: The Fractured Butthole, definitely play those games. They are hilarious. They are the definitive South Park video games. Well written, super funny, gameplay's a lot of fun. I mean, I guess if you don't enjoy the show, you probably won't enjoy the games. Maybe you will. Maybe it's the gameplay elements that bring you into the fold. But these were great DLCs, and I would definitely recommend them if you have the game. Then next up was a game that hadn't been in my backlog for too long, as it took a while for it to get a physical release. That is Sonic Mania Plus. Now I'm sure most of you have heard of this game. It is a new retro Sonic game, basically what the Sonic fans have wanted since the 90s. I think my biggest complaint was the revisiting of levels from previous games, but they mixed some things up, they added in some new levels, and they have a variety of characters you can actually play through. You can play as Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. I can't remember the other new characters off the top of my head, but you can play as them as well. They'll have different abilities, which kind of mixes up some of the gameplay. And I did beat the Mania mode with and without the Chaos Emerald, and then I played through the Encore mode, but I didn't bother getting the Chaos Emerald. Chaos Emeralds can be kind of a pain in the butt to get, and by the time I got to the Encore mode, I figured, you know what, I'd experienced enough of it, things weren't going to change too much, and I was really satisfied with it. What a great game. I would love to see them do another new retro Sonic game. I'd most likely check it out if they put the effort into that they did with this one. The next up is actually a game that I'd never played that people would be like, how the heck didn't you play that game? And that was Final Fight 2. Again, this was another hangout weekend. Me and a friend were looking for something to play, decided to crank out some beat 'em ups. We played some other games, but didn't beat those, and then moved on to Final Fight and just stuck with it to the end. Fortunately for us, it's not a super punishing game, so we were able to make it through. Hard to go wrong, even though I don't have a whole lot to say about it. We did just get the normal ending, which I think requires us to play on a harder difficulty to get the good ending, I guess. But I don't really need to sell anybody on Final Fight. They're classics, awesome games, and I'm glad to say I finally beat it. Then the next game was a game I was meaning to add to my collection for quite a while, just for some reason never picked it up, despite it having some particular memories with me and my brother and a cousin trying to play through this game summers when we were kids, and that is Cybernator, or originally known as Assault Suit Vulcan. Besides being a high-concept, sci-fi, mecha-based action game, the original version of this game, the uncensored version, had a lot of story elements to it. It took itself seriously, which a lot of games didn't really do that a whole lot. So when I did play this, I actually played through the American version, Cybernator, and funny enough, as I was trying to beat this game, because I wanted to finally say I beat this game, because I never did it as a kid, eventually I got to the point where I'd die and have to start over, and I would start speed running through the first couple levels, and discovered that if you get through the first level without doing any damage to anything besides the boss, you actually unlock a napalm weapon, which turns out to be the strongest weapon in the game, and that's the only way you can get it. And basically getting that kind of turns the game into easy mode. No regrets, because hey, it was a fair unlock, and it allowed me to beat the game without a whole lot of extra struggle. But that was pretty awesome to discover that, like, you know, what, 24 years after I'd played this game a whole bunch, and I'd never heard about that before. So that was pretty neat. And then after doing some research and hearing that the game was kind of like quote-unquote censored, I replayed a translated version of Assault Suit Vulcan, and I'm kind of dismayed to see what they'd removed. Basically all character dialogue. They had chat bubbles that actually had character expressions that kind of like elevated the events going on. They had censored some dialogue. There was some name calling, asshole and bastard, but the biggest change was an entire story scene in one of the levels when you're basically assaulting the city to learn that, you know, basically the president of your planet had betrayed everybody. You chase him down, and he actually commits suicide in the game. Like, they have the scene, you know, it's not like super graphic close up or anything, but it was pretty powerful for the time. It's like, wow, that was dark. So yeah, Cybernator I would recommend, but with the caveat that I really say if you want to play Cybernator, you should really play Assault Suit Vulcan instead. Play a ROM, reproduction, whatever. I mean, it really, really elevates the game. Just those little touches go a long way. Then next up, a game that I was really looking forward to despite not playing any of the rest of the series. I'd heard some really great things about some of the previous releases that have been in my backlog for years, but I decided to pick up Dragon Quest XI: Echoes of an Elusive Age. Now, for the longest time, I didn't really play many JRPGs. Last year, I'd played through Tales of Berseria, which I absolutely loved, and Dragon Quest XI, holy cow, what a game. This is basically comfort food for those who enjoy traditional JRPGs. You got your turn-based combat, kind of traditional story of good versus evil, but this game has some really awesome twists in it. Some things I didn't expect that I would love to talk about, but I don't want to spoil anything. But there's like two super significant twists in the game that, like, whoa, like really caught me off guard. Didn't see that coming. So I definitely recommend Dragon Quest XI, and I cannot stress this enough. I really just need to make a video of this on its own. There seems to be a recent trend with some Japanese developers that they put credits not at the end of the game. They put credits and then there's more game. And a lot of games, they kind of do this. They'll, you know, you'll play through the game, you get your credits, and then it throws you into just kind of like an open world extra mode, you know, post game where you can just wrap up some little side quests and things. But three specific examples, Nier Automata, Gravity Rush 2, and now Dragon Quest XI, are games that I think the choice that they made to put the credits where they did was a detriment to the game. Where these are games that those credits don't signify the end of the game. I don't know why they put the credits where they do. Especially with this, like, there's another like 20 hours of story directly building off of the whole entire quest of that you're going through the rest of the game. Like, when you get to the credits, like, if you really think about the story, like, there's a lot of like significant elements that aren't answered there. And not only do that, but they throw in this awesome twist. Especially for long-time Dragon Quest fans, I gotta imagine that this is pretty significant. So if you do play it, get over whatever hangups you have about credits, and I definitely do recommend Dragon Quest XI. The next up was a game that I didn't expect coming. I don't think anybody did. And this is Toby Fox's follow-up to Undertale, and this is called Deltarune, and this is Chapter 1. Now, basically what happened is the Undertale Twitter and Toby Fox's Twitter started posting these strange messages. Deltarune is coming. Look out. Be ready for it. Like, check back tomorrow or whatever. So then you come back onto those Twitter accounts the following day, and there's a link. You click on this link, and you download this program, and if you installed this program, ta-da, turns out Deltarune. And basically, like I said, this is a follow-up to Undertale. It's not connected to Undertale per se. The impression that I get is that this is kind of like alternate universe where we see some of the same characters, not necessarily the same personalities, but a somewhat similar experience to what Undertale offered. Very traditional JRPG style game, turn-based combat, where this one took a different approach, where Undertale kind of had that bullet hell, earthbound kind of combat, and this still has it, but now you have a party. And this is going to be an episodic series series, though it might be quite a while before we see the next part. Toby Fox had worked on this for like 3-4 years on his own, and with this release he said that he is going to build a team to help him finish this game. Otherwise it's going to be 7 years before we see the rest of it, and I cannot wait for more of it. If you are an Undertale fan and you enjoyed Undertale, you gotta play Deltarune. Unfortunately, it's only available for PC at this time, and it is free as well, so if you can, definitely check it out. Then the next 3 games were beaten in the same night. Another shout out to Jason of Corpse Flood Gaming. It actually came down from Canada to visit. We're gonna go to a metal show, and the night prior we decided to hit up a local arcade that we have in Twin Cities in Minnesota called the Up Down. Has lots of vintage and classic arcade games, and now being grown adults with a little spending money, we're able to get plenty of quarters to knock out a few games. Now I'm pretty sure that I've beaten the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game before, but I'm not entirely sure if I have. But we played through that, and then followed that up with the Battletoads arcade game, which I had never beaten before, and then followed that up with the X-Men arcade game, which I had also never beaten before. All 3 of these are basically legendary arcade beat-em-up games, so if you get the chance to play any of these arcade games, do play these. Then this next game kicks off a genre of games that I've had a little access to, but I haven't been able to spend a lot of times with these systems because I didn't have one of those, and that being VR, more specifically the PlayStation VR. I played the Oculus and the HTC Vive before. Jason of Corpse Flood Gaming hooked me up with a PSVR, and I immediately started putting it to use. And first game I decided to play was Super Hot VR. Now Super Hot is a pretty basic premise. Time moves when you move. If you don't move, nothing moves. And it's basically a level approach where you are a person, you are you, in a scenario. There'll be other people present, the red figures, and you need to take them out, whether it be hitting them, shooting them, throwing objects at them. You just gotta take them out without them taking you out first. This game really channels your inner Neo from the Matrix and lets you be a badass like John Wick. I had so much fun with this game. You'll hear me say this multiple times, but you can watch videos of VR games and they will never do it justice. You really have to experience it for yourself. It is impressive. The immersion is there. You feel like you are in these VR worlds. So if you have PSVR, if you have the Oculus Rift, or if you have the HTC Vive, definitely play Super Hot VR. Then next up was one of my most anticipated games for 2018, and that is Red Dead Redemption 2. Rockstar knows how to build an amazing game. It's not perfect, but the story, the world, the characters, the interactions, the immersion are some of the best around. The time I spent with Arthur Morgan is time that I'll never forget. Much like the story with John Marston, we quickly learn that the choices that we make, regardless if we find redemption or not, may come back to haunt us in the end. Though I did pick God of War as my game of the year for 2018, I wouldn't argue with anybody who picked Red Dead Redemption 2 as their game of the year. Red Dead 2 is deserving of all the praise it gets. There's some things I would really like to see them do to improve upon their games, because we haven't seen a lot of significant changes since like Grand Theft Auto 4 and 5, Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2. They're all very similar in many regards. So yeah, absolutely, Red Dead Redemption 2, definite play. Then we followed this up with one of the games that people would say is definitely not one of the best games of this generation. A game full of debate and controversy, and that is Fallout 76. But this was kind of a spin-off, like a sidestep game. Basically, they're like, hey, what if we took Fallout, made it multiplayer? Now this is basically the Fallout as you know it, minus NPCs, plus a server full of random players doing their own thing. And again, I'm sure most of you have heard the debates about this game. Most people trash on it. Personally, I really enjoyed it. At the core, this is still Fallout. The main things I enjoy when I play a Fallout game is the exploration and kind of putting the pieces together of the visual story of the events that we see and the places we visit. And all of that is very much there with Fallout 76. As always, we can wander into this destroyed town, start exploring houses, looking at kind of the scenery and how maybe some skeletons are laid out or various things to kind of tell us what happened in this place. Of course, there's notes to kind of fill us in on some of the story, the terminals, holotapes. A lot of the like dark humor is still present. Lots of things going on despite nobody being here. And it makes sense for the story because we are supposed to be kind of the first people out of the vaults post-nuclear war, and we do learn there were people that were trying to survive out in the wasteland after the nukes fell. And as we play through 76, we learn that things didn't work out for most of those factions. Now I will say it did kind of take a little while to get going before I really started picking up on the quest line, and there is a main quest line that will take you from the beginning of the game through the end of the content. Once things start rolling with the stories and the quests, like that's where the game really started to get me. There's a few particular quest lines that I thought were awesome. And really, if you want to hear my thoughts in depth about 76, go back and listen to my episodes on the Game Tenants podcast, where I go on for way too long about Fallout 76. Would I recommend it? I would say if you are a Fallout fan, I think it's worth playing. Then the next game I played was another VR game, a spin-off to Until Dawn called Until Dawn Rush of Blood. Now when I say spin-off, this is mostly just taking place in the world of Until Dawn being an amazing horror game for the PS4. And Rush of Blood basically is just kind of like an on-rail shooter. You are in a coaster cart. It's not a roller coaster, it just is the vehicle to progress you through the levels, and basically you play through the areas of Until Dawn, dual-wielding guns and shooting the crap out of things. This is one of the first games that I played for VR, which really impressed me how well the shooting was, how good it felt, and how immersive the VR experience could be. There's not really a whole lot to say about the game. The story doesn't really have any connection to Until Dawn. The story is definitely not the focus. It's just mostly a gameplay game, and as a VR game, I would definitely recommend it if you have a PSVR. And keeping the VR train going, this was a gift from my fiance for the both of us, and that is Rick and Morty Virtual Reality. This is like a job simulator kind of knockoff game, if you are familiar with that one. And essentially, you are a Morty clone stuck in Rick's garage performing a series of tasks that Rick is usually telling you to do off location through your communicator. The game is full of references to Rick and Morty, and had some pretty funny moments. It's a really small game. It took me about an hour and a half to play through it, so if the time you get out of it, it kind of balances off of how much you're willing to spend on a game, take that into account. I would say I would have liked to see more Rick and Morty like actually involved in the game, and maybe some, crazy Rick and Morty hijinks. But for what this game is, being kind of this isolated little fun experience, I'm glad I played it. I would only recommend it if you are a big Rick and Morty fan, you have VR, and you just want a little bit more of the humor to enjoy. Then the next game was a indie game that I was really anticipating after the first time I saw a trailer for it, and this is Gris. The initial trailers that I saw were visually stunning, basically advertising the amount of artistic vision that went into this game. It actually involved a real-world artist to come up with the style and design, and it's a very basic platformer. It's kind of your puzzle platformer, and it takes you to various regions of this world. Again, I just want to mention the visuals were amazing, the music was beautiful, and this game definitely delivered on my hype. Gris was one of my favorite indie games from 2018, and I definitely would recommend checking it out. Then after Gris, decided to play another VR game. You can kind of see a thing going on as of recent. And the next game was Deracine. What was particularly interesting is this is a game from Software. And From Software are known for the Dark Souls games, Bloodborne, Kingsfield, and even Armored Core. Essentially, it's a walking sim. In this game, you are basically what they are calling a fairy or a ghost. And it seems like you are stuck at this boarding school with these other children. So basically, as the game progresses, you kind of explore this house. And everything is kind of like a fleeting memory. So as you explore, you'll come across the instances of the children in the locations that they were, and they're basically kind of frozen, and you interact with them and they'll kind of fill you in on the last thing that they did. And things really seem kind of basic and straightforward at first. But about halfway through the game, things really start to get interesting, and they throw in a pretty fascinating twist. I would say almost on the level of something like the twist in Until Dawn, without giving any spoilers, that I really didn't see coming. It doesn't change the gameplay at all. You're still kind of exploring these areas and interacting with things, doing some minor puzzles, but how they presented the game and the story that they crafted here was really enjoyable. So if you like what you see, I would definitely say check it out, and here's hoping From Software does some more VR stuff. Then the last game that I beat for 2018 was another VR game, and this is a game I'm actually still playing, and that is Beat Saber for the PSVR. Now this was released earlier in 2018 for PC VR, and was just released in the end of November for PSVR. And basically what this is a rhythm game where you're using the Move controllers, and they're basically lightsabers. There's electronic music and blocks that come towards you that will have an arrow, and you slash the block in that arrow. Sounds pretty basic, yet this game is so much fun, I can't do it justice. Now I'm sure as many of you can tell in a lot of my videos, you see all my metal shirts. I love my metal. I'm not big into electronic music, so if the music doesn't initially catch you when you're checking out videos and stuff, I would say give it an honest shot if you're gonna try it. I actually ended up really liking most of the music in the game, and it's more of a vehicle to kind of get you going with the gameplay. When you're playing this game, you feel like a ninja Jedi, and it's awesome. I can't do this game justice. The PSVR version has a campaign that you can play through that was really neat. Basically, get you started at the very basics, kind of, slow song, chopping blocks, and then progressively gets harder and harder, sometimes doing faster songs, disappearing arrows, ramps up the difficulty, and will add some other interesting modifiers. So I played through the entire campaign, beat all the levels, and since then, I find myself almost every other day going back and just doing free play of the songs. By the time I beat the campaign, I was able to play through most of the songs on hard, and then I tried getting full combos on the songs on hard, which is basically playing through an entire song without missing a single note. And since then, I've now been doing this on expert, really challenging myself. You know, if you play the game, you definitely don't have to push yourself, but I'm having a lot of fun doing that. Pushing the limits with this game is definitely the best way to enjoy it. When you're just slowly chopping, you know, slow blocks, like it's kind of like, ugh, you know, okay, it's kind of neat. But once you start getting a little faster and you're chopping and swinging all over the place, it's really when it gets a lot of fun. You watch videos, people look a little silly playing it, but when you're playing it, it feels awesome. Beat Saber is my favorite VR game that I've played yet. I don't see myself stopping playing it anytime soon. And if you really get into it and really push yourself, it ends up being a pretty decent workout too. That's largely why I say I play it every other day. So yes, Beat Saber. Awesome. And with that, that is all the games I beat in 2018. That is 44 games, this video and the previous video. Like I said before, I really enjoy reviewing games, talking about the games I played, and this is my way of reviewing all of those games. So, as always, I would love to hear your thoughts. Which of these games have you played? Which of these games are you looking forward to playing? Am I a big stupid head for enjoying Fallout 76? And who else out there enjoyed Fallout 76? Most people I heard that gave it an honest go enjoyed the game, and I know a handful of people that played it. But I digress. I have a lot of fun talking about these. I love hearing the things you guys say about it. I enjoy reading all your comments and hearing your thoughts about the games as well. I will say at this point, 2019 is off to a great start, and I'm looking forward to talking about more video games in the future. Then with that said, thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you next time on the Game Grinder.